the Supreme Court in the Bruin and the Heller decision, Caetano and then Bruin, came and said that any firearm that is in common use for lawful purposes is protected by the Second Amendment and cannot be banned.
That was Sam Paredes with Gun Owners of California in April of last year, warning about lawsuits over bans on common weapons. One of the latest targets, New York's ban on Glock-style handguns. Welcome back to the States. I'm Greg Bishop. California, Maryland, Connecticut, and New York have all passed their own and governor-signed laws that restrict the sale, transfer, manufacture, or importation of certain Glock-like or Glock-style handguns. And again, you can see there, those states, California, their law is effective July 1st of this year. Maryland, their law is effective January 1st of 2027. Connecticut, October 1st of 2026. And New York, their law is effective May 31st of 2027. Now, existing owners can generally keep what they already own under some of these laws. Law enforcement and military exemptions are pretty much standard. These laws are sold as bans on machine gun convertible pistols or convertible pistols. Now, here's testimony from when Maryland was debating its version of this law back in 2025.
This unit that I lead regularly investigates and prosecutes cases involving possession of illegal firearms and their modifications, including the increasingly prevalent Glock switches, devices designed to convert semi-automatic firearms into fully automatic weapons. These devices pose an unprecedented threat to public safety and law enforcement officers in our communities. Recent data reported by Prince George's County Police indicates that we have recovered 47 Glock switches last year in 2024. This year to date, we've recovered 9 Glock switches already.
Are already illegal, but that's not stopping legislators in some states to move to try to ban Glocks or Glock-style firearms. Now, in California, April of 2025, California gun owners, Sam Paredes, he said what he says is these bans, they're unconstitutional.
Glock, the single most popular firearm for self-defense in the world, especially here in California and the United States. They are ubiquitous. The issue of, the Supreme Court in the Bruin and the Heller decision, Caetano and then Bruin, came and said that any firearm that is in common use for lawful purposes is protected by the Second Amendment and cannot be banned. That's the first reason where this thing is going to go to court immediately if it is signed by the governor.
Is now pending in court. In New York this May, legislators debated their own version. State Senator George Borrello, he didn't hold back on his criticism of New York's ban.
You know, there's a very popular pistol, a Glock. A lot of people own it. It's probably the most popular in the United States. And it would fall under this category. So we're basically going to say to New York retailers of firearms, you can no longer sell probably the most popular pistol in the United States. And I believe that my colleagues know that. I'll think that's great. But it's not going to solve the problem because we failed to address the issue. The issue is people who commit violent acts of crime with or without a gun that continue to go unpunished here in New York State. So we're going to say to legal law-abiding citizens, you can't buy it here from a small business, most likely here in New York State.
Again, that law, just as California's law, now being challenged in court. The Second Amendment Foundation, the National Rifle Association, Firearms Policy Coalition, 2 private citizens, and a licensed dealer announced their lawsuit against New York's law. Now, back to California, a Biden-appointed federal judge has refused for now the Trump administration's efforts to block California's law from banning the sale of handguns made by Glock and similar weapons. The DOJ has alleged that California's law is unconstitutional. The question remains, will they join in suing New York over their law? But unlike California's law, New York's law makes violations punishable of up to 7 years in prison. Plaintiffs notes the Supreme Court's already told New York it is out of step with the Second Amendment. Now they're arguing the state cannot ban one of the most popular handguns designed in America. Second Amendment Foundation founder and executive vice president Alan Gottlieb, he put it this way. He said, quote, "Lawmakers in New York are doing nothing more than continuing their unconstitutional assault on law-abiding citizens who want to exercise their Second Amendment rights in peace. Making someone a criminal for selling or transferring a handgun merely because someone can illegally convert those firearms into something that they are not is absurd. It's already illegal to convert these pistols into machine guns, and the conversion itself requires possession of other illegal items. The lawmakers persist in focusing on the handgun and not the criminals who will continue committing crimes with or without this new law in place." Now, Gottlieb talking about what are called auto sears, but have been given the label Glock switches. That is a piece that goes on a Glock frame to change it from semi-auto to full auto. So what's exactly being banned here? Well, the Second Amendment Foundation says factory stock Glock and Glock-style pistols have a cruciform trigger bar. That design feature alone now meets New York's definition of a convertible pistol. Once the law takes effect in New York, May 31st, 2027, selling or transferring them becomes illegal. Quick translation for non-gun people. Glock and Glock pattern pistols use a polymer frame that houses the fire control group. There's no separate lower receiver like there is for a rifle. Now, the key part of that is the cruciform, or cross-shaped trigger bar that links the trigger to the firing pin. A small illegal parts can be inserted to turn that pistol full auto. Now, Illinois, they advanced a similar bill through committee this year, but it died when the session ended. Here's some on the floor debate in the House chamber during a committee hearing back in May about this particular proposed legislation.
If Glock actually does what you want, they change their ways, they become a better manufacturer, how do they get certified going forward? And that's not in this bill.
The bill explicitly calls for the Department of State Police to make regulations to effectuate the law and its implementation. That's exactly what we would ask them to do, is to examine the current market, look at the definition of convertible pistol in the bill, which is extremely explicit, look at the definition of common household tools, which is a closed universe of known common household tools, and publish a list so that there is no uncertainty. We're not trying to trick anyone here. We want every seller, every FFL operating in the state of Illinois to fully understand the rules and what's lawful for sale and what's not. And if Glock does have a change of heart after nearly 40 years and finally address this vulnerability, that new model will be assessed by the state police, and it will be listed as a gun that's not a convertible pistol and will be perfectly legal to sell in the state of Illinois going forward.
Now, as to that proposed bill in Illinois, again, it did not advance before session ended at the end of May. As for whether Glock itself will redesign its guns for these particular states, back to California, Sam Paredes, he doesn't think that will matter in a state like California.
The author criticizes Glock for doing nothing about this issue. In fact, they did so with their Generation 4 Glocks. They modified them so the Glock switches could not be applied, and all of them in the future. The problem is the state of California prevents Glock from selling Generation 4, 5, and now 6 in the state of California because of the unreasonableness of the roster.
Now, that roster in California, it's a restrictive roster of handguns approved for sale. Manufacturers must prove to state regulators that their firearms meet specific safety and testing requirements. Massachusetts has long had a strict handgun roster and sales rules that already limits Glock sales in practice, but bans on switches and ghost guns. It does not, however, have a statewide convertible pistol design that these 4 other states have approved. Now, lawsuits on this and plenty of other Second Amendment fights are still moving through the courts. We'll be staying on top of that and more here with the states. We'll be right back with more.